Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, May 8th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. Today, coming with only two people. Old school style. Mike and I did a bunch of podcasts in our lives this way.
Yes.
Before we had Google and before we had fancy things via the phone. So it's fun to be back and just doing our basic old thing. And we have plenty of things to talk about. So we're going to get right to it today. That's
yes.
No pre-show because Mike, who hates the Washington Capitals, had to deal with the fact last night that because immediately, what's the deal, Mike? So first of all, the Capitals obviously have eliminated the Pittsburgh Penguins, which spoiler alert, I guess. Spoiler alert, the Caps won.
I don't hate the Washington Capitals.
Immediately after the game, you tweet, the Caps have won to lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Well, first of all, I picked the Lightning to win this to be the Eastern Conference representative in the Stanley Cup final. So whoever won this, Pittsburgh or Washington, I thought they were going to lose to Tampa. And my critique of the Washington Capitals is they've done nothing over recent history other than choke against the Penguins. So my pick of the Penguins was based on their history.
But now they've beaten the Penguins. Why are we? Can we just admit that this Capitals team is pretty good?
Well, here you go. And this is my theory. This was not a Capitals victory. This was a Penguins loss. This was the fact that the Penguins, as you said, they traded Ian Cole.
Well, that's something we talk about. Yeah, for sure.
The Stanley Cup hangover, playing 4 rounds the last 2 years. I think it was more the fact that they looked completely gassed because, honestly, Washington outplayed them in the first 2 periods. What did Pittsburgh have? 8 shots on goal, and it was tied 1-1. If they had any kind of energy level, I think they would have beaten the Caps and we'd be going to Game 7. But they looked completely sapped of strength. Malkin was hurt. Kessel was probably hurt. And the Penguins, if the Penguins were at full strength, I think they would have won that game. They weren't at full strength. So I give credit to the Capitals for being able to finally beat them. But do I think they have a chance in hell of beating Tampa Bay? No.
Oh, I think that's totally ridiculous. First of all, you're just used to playing in that wimpy conference, wimpy division up there called the Atlantic.
Where 3 teams were in the top 6 in the NHL.
Yeah, because they played the bottom 4 other teams. That's why they have the top 3 of the top 60. That's why. Let's face facts here. The reason that those teams are up there so highly is because they played so many games against the Sabres, Senators, and other bottom dwellers that were in that division that we can't even remember.
I don't buy into that, but okay.
No, but in the Capitals to get to where Tampa has the Lightning. Let's face it, the Lightning have beat the Devils, who were an okay team, but a team on the uprise, and they're going to be there for a while, but they're not ready yet. And then they beat a Boston team that was really beaten up by the Maple Leafs in a 7-game series. And the Capitals to get there have beaten a Columbus Blue Jackets team that was the best team in hockey from December on.
Yes, but when they got to the playoffs and after they won 2 games in overtime, it was Heimlich maneuver for the team from Ohio, because they had that series. Russ and I have said that before. They had that series.
The Capitals have just gotten best 2 teams that have choked. Basically, you're saying.
I think Columbus choked, and I think Pittsburgh was exhausted. So I'm not giving them a ton of credit.
Yeah, you're not giving any credit. But this is and I just think they beat 2 of the best teams in hockey. I'm gonna say right now that because I honestly think that Columbus and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh. I picked Capitals to win the series, and that's because I saw in the Flyers series that this Penguins team wasn't the Penguins team that we thought about. That's why I went. I'm like, the Flyers should not have taken them to 6 games.
Agreed.
Given what the Flyers had, so therefore I thought a Capitals team, which had a goaltender, actually 2 goaltenders that were way better than anything the Flyers had, plus just more depth around. Was going that Capitals team was going to beat the Penguins. That was my feeling going into this, and I still feel like these Penguins were lesser of a team.
Let me ask you: do you think that yesterday's victory was a victory based on Braden Holtby stoning the Penguins? Because I don't think so.
No, and that's what I think is actually better about this Capitals team. Like, I think this Capitals team is actually a better all-around team than the Capitals teams that lost to the Penguins before. I think that they have more depth, more offense. Their Kuznetsov is scoring. Like, he's had playoffs where he didn't show up. He's obviously shown up in these playoffs. Ovechkin has shown up in these playoffs. They did it without Backstrom. I mean, talk about injuries. I mean, that was a way bigger injury than anybody the Penguins were missing.
And that's going to be an injury going forward because if you saw the video from NBCSN before the game, he had his right hand wrapped. It could be a wrist. It could be a broken bone in his hand. It could be now Barry Trotz is saying the right things. He's saying, well, he tried to play Game 7, and we'll expect him to get him back early in the series. But
yeah, I mean, he did. He left at 6:30 last night from the arena. I mean, so it's not broken. I mean, if it is broken, it's something that they felt like they could tape, and it probably just isn't. The swelling hasn't gone down on it enough to really get back, and that's typical in situations like that. I just think that this Capitals team is. They've always been very good. They have in the past lost to the Penguins in this round, and I think getting past the Penguins in this round is an enormous accomplishment for them to the point where now the Tampa might not be the biggest challenge for them. Tampa is a very, very good team, but I think at the same time, I think the Caps have. I mean, Holtby is better than anybody that Tampa's faced so far. Right. I mean,
sure, but you can look at it. You can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it from the Capitals' perspective of now we've won our Stanley Cup. We finally beat the Penguins, and there's a sigh of relief. But also the fact that if they're not facing that 800-pound gorilla off their back. Now they could say we're satisfied, and they lose to Tampa.
And that could be. They could. You could see that early in the series. I think that it's important for Washington to come out in the series hard. That if they don't come out hard in the beginning of the series, Tampa could get a jump on them. And if you lose a couple games, the problem always occurs. Like basically what happened to the Sharks. Like if you lose a game early in the series that you shouldn't have lost, then you're destined to lose the series on a game that you should have won, which is like what happened with the Sharks. But you can't sit there and the Sharks played a much better game than the Vegas Knights in that final game, but lost it. That's because you blow a couple games early in the series. You can't do that, right? So, yeah, the Capitals are going to have issues, I think, but there is that potential of that, but there's also the potential of them actually, getting the monkey off their back and rolling. I think that's also possible here, and especially in the case of Ovechkin, who's been who I really think. I mean, listening to Ovechkin after the game yesterday. I mean, this is like we talked about. This is a huge monkey off of his back in every possible way. Like this is the Ovechkin versus Crosby, and Crosby has beaten Ovechkin at every level of every whatever uniform they're wearing. Crosby beats Ovechkin, right? So Ovechkin beating Crosby, and actually it's funny. Like actually on a play where Ovechkin kind of steals the puck from Crosby in the overtime.
Yeah.
That was that was very symbolic, and you could tell how excited Ovechkin was. I think that. And listening to Barry Trotz yesterday in his post-game press conference, it was funny because it was the same kind of feeling I had that they were just going to win this game 6 no matter what, because the Penguins they just looked like they were running out of steam. They may be tired, like you said. They may be this or that, but they didn't have. I mean, Malkin is playing hurt, but Malkin's played hurt before really well.
Yeah.
Kessel, I don't think is hurt. I think is just. Maybe Kessel is running out of a little bit of gas there.
Well, I mean, honestly, if Kessel is not hurt, he was horrific in the playoffs. And if he's hurt, I give him a pass.
He was good against the Flyers, but he was bad against against Kessel. He had a couple goals against the Flyers that were pretty big. But I think that I mean, at the end of the day, this is going to be an interesting series to look at. Is Tampa, Washington, how that's going to play out. I hope they started on Friday. I was rumored they might.
I think it's Friday or Saturday.
Yeah, I hope they start on Friday because I hate all these days off. The NHL doesn't, doesn't like days off like this at all.
Well, Thursday is going to be a dark day because there's going to be Game 7 of Nashville, Winnipeg, which we'll talk about in a second, and then I don't think any of the other series are starting until at least Friday. So
yeah, they're not going to start it on Thursday. There was a rumor that they might start the next series on Thursday, but I think because
if Winnipeg had closed it out.
Well, no, if Winnipeg closed it out, they definitely would have. But I think that there was a thought at the NHL, because I asked this in the first round when it would look like there was possible. I said, is it possible to start the second series before the first series ends? And they said it was. So I don't know.
Well, that would be different because the NBA does that, but the NHL has never done that.
NHL historically doesn't do it.
Yeah,
because historically you don't have quick series in the NHL. That's why, I mean, that's what they said to me. It's like, really, we haven't had that many instances when we could have done it in the past.
And I know that the Cup final starting date is usually set in stone. I mean, they have like a couple days where there's like flexibility. But
yeah, they can go a couple days early, but not much.
But we're talking about May 8th, and we're starting the conference final.
Yeah,
usually the conference final is 2 weeks. We're talking about probably starting the Stanley Cup final around May 25th, maybe May 26th,
which is early.
Early. I mean, the season could be over with by, I'd say, the end of the first week of June, and then usually we've had the Cup final, and then 2 days later we have the NHL awards in Vegas. You're gonna have 2 weeks in between the way it's going right now.
Yeah, you are, and that's gonna be I mean that's good. I mean that's the NHL definitely likes that. I mean it's hard to get from. I mean they put the awards in there, right, too. Like I mean the awards fit in the middle there, so there's no time off. I mean the people who work at the NHL, it's funny when you talk to them when you get your credentials for an NHL Cup final and you're talking to those guys, and because you end up meeting up with them after the NHL throws these great media dinners afterwards after the games. You talk to them, they are just so spent by the Cup final, and they're looking ahead at what they've got to come, which is they got to get to the awards thing, and then they got to get to the draft. They are really just like this is tough time of year for these guys. They are running like crazy.
Let's just say I'm looking forward to the barbecue ribs at the NHL Media Day in Dallas for the draft.
It'll be fun. I mean, I went to my first NHL event I ever attended was in Dallas. It was the All-Star game in Dallas.
Okay.
And that was quite a while ago. But that was the first one I ever attended, and yeah, it was fun. They had really good food. There's no question about that.
Make sure you bring your sunblock, which I will. I'm
and I took
SPF50.
I took the JFK tour and stuff like that too.
I'm doing that too. I'm going to do that on the before all the festivities start on Thursday. I'm gonna go to Dealey Plaza and take the tour.
Yeah, I figured a history buff like you was gonna have to do that.
Yes.
I mean, I took the MLK tour when I was in Memphis earlier this year,
wow.
Which was incredible too. The funny thing about the MLK, just this is totally aside for a second, but Mike and I will get on tangents when we just do the show ourselves sometimes. So my wife and I are I guess 9 months apart. I'm 9 months older than my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the one thing I can hold claim to fame is I was alive when MLK was shot and she wasn't. It happened like right in the middle. Right in the middle of the two times that, for whatever it's worth.
Well, that's like me, and this is hockey related, not assassination related. But last week was the 51st anniversary of the Leafs winning their last cup. They won it on May the 2nd, 1967. And a friend of mine had their birthday, and they were born on that exact day. So I sent them a message saying, well, two great things happened: your birthday and the Leafs won their last Stanley Cup on that very day. I was a month old, so hopefully I'll have a little more awareness when the Leafs win their next Stanley Cup.
Well, I used to jokingly say that I am the Leafs curse because I was probably conceived just about when when that happened, just about when in 1960. I was born in January of 1968, so I was really pretty close to right about dead on there to that. So your
dad was inspired by George Armstrong's
actual existence has could have ended the Leafs' reign, depending on, of course, when birth begins. But we're not going to get into that. Okay.
Let's talk about the other conference.
All right, let's go over to the other. Now this series.
I have a note from Peter here because he was on his way to Vancouver, and he wanted me to pass this note on. He said, "You can tell everyone that I thought that game was a complete crap show, and the Preds did a masterful job on the road. And this was the same plan, the same thing that they did in Game 4. They went in, they scored early, and they shut the crowd down."
But that's always the plan. I mean,
I know it's a plan, but they actually implemented it. They actually,
to actually do it. I mean, it had a lot to do. I really felt like yesterday, like I said, I thought both series were going to end last night. I did. I really had a feeling that Nashville was going to lose. But the closer it got to game time, I also got the feeling, like I'd also said during the show yesterday, which was hedging my bet or whatever, but saying that I thought there was a lot of pressure on Winnipeg last night, and that a young team under that kind of pressure to win it. And I did say last night, I bet the Jets wished that game wasn't at home. Like, I think that really came, and I think that, it really felt to me as if they just looked a little nervous. Like, that the brevity of the whole situation, of being able to go to the conference finals, of being in that spot, against a team that has been if you go back the last 10 years, one of the best teams facing elimination in the NHL has been the Nashville Predators. They are incredible at staving off elimination. I mean, they don't always win the series, but they will extend series, and they are very, very good at this. And you saw it last night in clear. You know, that was a Predators game to a T. Like, that is exactly what they want to do. And we have seen the fascinating thing about the series is we've seen the games where the offense, where Winnipeg's offense beats Nashville's offense, and we've seen games where Winnipeg's defense beats where Nashville's defense beats Winnipeg's defense.
Right.
And that's what you saw last night. So it's who's going to win. It's like we have not yet seen the game.
Well, I have to say that, if anybody is not impressed with the skill of Philip Forsberg, they should be, I question their sanity, because the one goal, the goal to make it 3-0, where he gets the puck and he shoots it between his legs through Hollaback. I mean, my goodness. I mean, how
the confidence and the cockiness to do that was the crazy thing. Like, to me, like that's the cocky goal that like goalies hate, that between the leg thing.
Yes. Because it makes them look foolish.
Yeah, it's the Malik goal from the shootout years ago. Like it's whenever you play open hockey and someone comes in on a breakaway, they do that to you. It's like, oh, they're laughing and da-da-da. It's been going on for years.
I have to give credit to the guys that normally, and I'm not saying just you, but there's been some criticism of guys like Ryan Johansson. I saw Ryan Johansson on the PK yesterday, flying all over the place, blocking shots, checking. I mean,
I've been very critical of him.
He was really engaged yesterday, and you would say, you should be when you're making $8 million a year and it's game 6 of a key series. But sometimes players just play at their pace, and that's all they do. I thought Johansson was fantastic. I thought Forsberg was great. Arvidsson showed up, and their defense. I mean, I don't know if it was PK, doing his Mark Messier thing, backing it up, but he really didn't do a lot. But sometimes, when you're on defense and you don't notice them, that's a good thing. But I guess the guarantee worked.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's not the guarantee. I mean, to me, that does not do it. I mean, to me, I will say something that I think is kind of maybe a little bit crazy, but I wish, I kind of wish we had Paul McCann on. And if he's listening, Paul, if you're listening, like, just text me what you think of this comment, because I know he watches the show, or Pete Weber watches the show sometimes. I really felt like perhaps the best thing that ever happened to Ryan Johansson was, for his long-term success, was getting hurt in the playoffs last year and having to watch. Because at the end of the day, in the past, he has not shown up necessarily in big games. And, in the playoffs, he was having a pretty good playoffs, not an incredible playoffs when he got knocked out last year, but a pretty good playoffs. And this year, though, I mean, I think having to watch those playoffs has made him just appreciate this, and it made him realize, what has to get done. And I really feel as if you're getting, the Ryan Johansson the best of him, which is amazing. I mean, when he does this, he's incredible. He's matured, I kind of always, him and Kyle Torres, I've always sort of put in the same boat sometimes as two players who were very kind of immature in their earlier career and have matured. Torres is not the player, of course, that Johansson is, but Johansson has shown some incredible, and his penalty killing ability. I'll tell you who Johansson reminds me of. He kind of reminds me of Jeff Carter sometimes. Like, I think that they feel like similar players to me in size, and the way that the kind of goals they score are similar. And the fact that when they want to, they can be awesome defensively. Like, Carter has the same ability. He can kill a penalty like no one's business, but it's rare that you'll get it out of him. That's not what you're going to get out of Jeff Carter. But right now, Laviolette has everyone bought in. And I think that comes down to, and I also talked to somebody down there and says, you can't underestimate what Mike Fisher has meant to the room.
He got hurt yesterday.
He's hurt. Yeah.
Now, I don't know how serious it was, but he never came back after the first period. So it may have been, I mean, if they do lose him for game 7, that'll be a loss, because you want that veteran guy out there. But
I don't even know if you need him out there as much as you've needed him to this point. Like, you might not need him out there in game 7, but you've, like, to get to this point, Laviolette comes from the school of coaches that always wants to have somebody to sell the system to their team, a player who's actually going to sell the system. And that's what Fisher is. Fisher sells the system.
Right.
And, and that's really important with guys like Johansson, like Forsberg, players who are just skilled players who think that they are all that, but have to be told to play a team game sometimes, Yeah.
Now, on the other side, and like, I didn't think Winnipeg played badly. I think they had a lot of opportunities on Rene, but one of the things I would be critical of was the ineffectiveness of their power play. You really need, when you get key power play opportunities early in the game, and you could see Laviolette sort of stewing on the bench when they're, I can't remember who it was that took a couple. Yannick Weber took a bad tripping penalty in the first period in the corner. Putting them down after they had just killed off a penalty. And really, Winnipeg's power play was not that effective. I mean, they had a one-timer from Line A that Rene made a nice save on. But other than that, there weren't that many great chances. And with that firepower, you really need that team to produce on the power play, and they didn't.
You would really expect it. I mean, you definitely would expect more of it. I totally agree with you. And they just, again, it was a lot of nervousness. It was, I think the fact that the Predators got that first goal in such a weird way so early when that crowd was so fired up, that's the kind of thing that makes you just think, oh man, we're not just going to roll over the Predators and go to the Stanley Cup, conference finals. It's like that you really sense that.
I mean, there was too much of a buildup. I mean, I get it.
You can't avoid it. There's nothing you can do about it.
I know. I mean, I really get it. I mean, for that town where the team moved out of the city for years that they suffered, they get back a team. It took them a long time to get to this point. They're extremely talented. Unlike some of the other teams in Canada, I'm actually like pro Winnipeg. I'd like to see them win because they're a very likable, very entertaining team. I don't know about some of the members of the media who are talking anti-Toronto trash, but I'll get to them some other time.
Yeah.
But just I wouldn't mind seeing them win. But it may be a year too early. I mean, I definitely think Nashville is favored going into Game 7, but this has been a home ice disadvantage in this series. You're home, you're going to lose because the pressure seems to be more on the home team, and the teams are pretty even. So I picked Nashville in the series, and I think I picked it in 7. So I'll stick with that prediction. But I mean, who knows what the hell is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, this is now a really tough spot for the Jets to be in. I was watching the Hockey Night in Canada version of this last night, and it was weird. They went to the coach's corner right afterwards, and which I don't know, maybe they do often, but I didn't.
They do, and in the playoffs they do.
Okay, so they went to that right away, and I usually don't. Maybe I just usually switch to another game at that point.
Mm-hmm.
They brought up something that was really fascinating. That over the last, I think 10 years or 15 years or something like that. The last 60 times a team has won a game in the playoffs, and then you've had 2 days off after it. The team that lost that game has won 40 of 20. Has gone 40 and 20. So they've won 2/3 of the time. So the break, what a 2-day break means, they're saying basically it usually does not benefit the team that wins the game before the break.
Right.
And that's kind of strange. That's kind of counterintuitive in some ways because, you think about it, like I know the difference when you win a game in the playoffs versus when you lose, and the off days around teams after a loss in the playoffs is just horrendous. Like that they're down. They just can't wait to play again. They're really pissed off.
Right.
Maybe when you win and you've got 2 days off, you get comfortable, but I think
But it's only one. I mean, it's only one day.
Yeah.
We're talking Monday and then Wednesday. So there's the day off, the travel day. It's not the Game 7's not on Thursday. I mean, it's on
Thursday.
I thought it's on Wednesday.
No, it's on Thursday.
Okay, I thought
that's the point. That's yep.
I mean, if it's on Thursday, then okay. I mean, then I'm checking as we speak here. But if it's on Thursday,
no, it's on Thursday. That's why I was bringing in the beginning of the show. That's why the whole beginning of the show doesn't make any sense now, Mike. I was talking about why they could possibly start on Thursday.
Oh, you're right. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Gives them a chance to regroup.
Just mark that point, guys out there. I'm not just opening up the chat room, and in the chat room, just note the point that Mike just said I was right. Because
to use the phrase that I use very often, even a broken clock is right twice a day.
You gave me that last night. I know,
but it's a good phrase.
It is a good phrase. It's a phrase that I'm very familiar with because it's a phrase that has been used on me a few times.
It always applies.
Anyway,
sorry.
So yeah,
I mean that is a good, but maybe the pressure builds up more. I mean, like I said, I think the pressure is more on Nashville. I mean, this team was built to do what this team didn't do last year, which is get to the Stanley Cup final and win. They're going to be in front of, the and I'm using this lovingly, the lunatic fans in Nashville, who are just as wild as the fans in Winnipeg. And by the way, I have to stop and say this. Jeremy Roenick, what were you thinking last night with this? The clown. Did you see the clown makeup that he was wearing? He was part of this, group of fans who are out, and Peter would know. Yeah, I'm sort of out of this in terms of there's a group of fans that dress up with like white makeup and a blue mustache, and Roenick went to their house and got dressed up in a clown wig, white makeup, and a mustache. I tweeted out, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? This is bizarre, but
it's cuckoo clown land. That is what he. I mean, Roenick is that the character, and what they call it, cuckoo clown. I forget the expression of it in theater. That is supposed to be like in every play or every movie has like the comedic extra that has nothing to do with what's going on, but is just there.
Okay.
That's what he is.
I'm sure in Winnipeg these guys are like famous, like the Green Men in Vancouver. I just don't know, I mean, if this is part of
when they're down 4-0, there's nothing more depressing than them panning the audience to people in like white faces and like with their whole bodies painted white, and it's just like it just that is one of those moments when you're like, you're looking at each other like, but
well, I had to give an award to some of the Pittsburgh fans after Kuznetsov scored the winning goal in overtime, because unlike the Ovechkin goal in Game 4, I believe it was, where he got let's say a group slew of middle fingers, the only thing I saw from a Pittsburgh fan was just like a wave of disgust. There was no obscenities. There was nothing. It was just like, okay, they won. Let's leave now. We've won 2 Stanley Cups. Screw you, Caps. It was basically what it was.
I was kind of disappointed with that, and I really was. I mean, I think that, there's so many different. You really see the class of someone in a loss, and that I've always felt that, like we played. I've coached teams, where we've had, in girls soccer at high levels now that my daughter's at this, playing at a high level, and we're playing against some really good teams, some dirty teams. Went to Austria last year, played against a really dirty team that just was completely ridiculous and taking dives all over the place. And our girls were totally pissed off and really upset about the whole thing. At the end, they didn't want to shake hands, stuff like that. And it just, or whatever, it just has that. And I've always said, that's just not, it's not good ever, and it's not good to like sit there and, like just walk away from a situation like that. That's when you show what you're all about, and that's when the right answer is our team hates to lose, of course, but and it's good that our team hates to lose because we're competitive. But at the same time, I really liked, for example, what the coach from the Sharks, sorry, I can't remember.
Peter DeBoer.
Right, Peter DeBoer, the way he handled the Vegas in his post game press conference. I mean, he could have sat back and, I mean, you got to be pissed off if you're the Sharks about that game. You've hit all these posts, you've had all these chances, all these opportunities. You definitely played well enough to send that to a 7th game. But he sat there and he just gave credit. He's like, Peter DeBoer said, I thought we were the hardest working team in the NHL. And I got to tell you that team in Vegas is the hardest working team in the NHL. And that to me, that's impressive, and Barry Trotz, year after year after year of losing to the Penguins, has always had something really impressive to say. He's always been there saying something, because that's the way Trotz is just totally class 100% all the way. Sullivan's press conference, it left a little bit of desired, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh fans have nothing to be depressed about it. They've won 2 cups in a row. They've had Sidney Crosby on top of having Mario Lemieux. It's like, I mean, I think many fan bases out there would take 2 cups in a row, 3 cups over the last decade.
Yeah, one maybe in 50 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there you go. Just a little, because you touched on the Sharks. Just a little note here from San Jose. In their post-season locker cleanout, Joe Thornton indicated he had a torn ACL, MCL in his right knee this year, and that was the same injury that he had last year. So now he's had that on both knees.
That means we'll be able to get another $9 million this year, or whatever, you know.
Well, he said he wants to remain in San Jose, and he'd be willing to sign another 1-year deal and take a pay cut to help the team sign other free agents.
He'll take $7 million, you know, for this.
Right. Well, see that and that's the thing. That's the thing, because, and I'm sure we'll talk about this as we get closer to July 1. But San Jose has been rumored to be one of those teams that if Tavares does opt out with the Island, that they have, you know, they're a playoff team. They have good players. They're ready to win now, and they may need that one guy. I just don't think they can sign Tavares at 11 or 12 or 13 million and then re-sign Joe Thornton for $5. I think it's, you know, he'd have to take a $1 or $2 million deal, and I think that's not going to happen. So
it's tough. I mean, I think that Doug Wilson will, you know, and Joe Thornton are tight enough that they'll be able to figure out something. And because, I mean, obviously Joe is, you know, he is Mr. San Jose Shark after all these years, you know, he's the guy. And so you have to give him everything you possibly can,
right?
You know, to actually, you know, and they did that this year. I mean, they showed him, and then, you know, but Joe's also the kind of guy who hates the fact he took all the money that he did this year and didn't play. You know, like that's going to be on Thornton's head.
He only took, and this is the only defense, he only took that money after Marleau signed in Toronto. It was basically, he was going to take less if they were signing Marleau, and then Marleau got the 3rd year from Toronto, and he went that way. And Toronto, as you well know, Toronto was in on Thornton last year too.
Yeah, and that surprised me.
Right, which would lead. Well, I think it's the connection.
Think of the disaster that would have been.
I don't think it would have. Well, I don't think it would have been a disaster, because I think the Leafs probably would have ended. Well, I mean, with the knee injury, who knows if the knee injury would have happened.
I mean, it's the same knee injury he had before. You know, you got to think that
on the opposite knee.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought it was the same one.
One was on the left, one was on the right. So,
well, then you're maybe just talking a little bit of age too. You know, so
right, exactly.
He's definitely more. He's, you know, his injury rating is higher than most. Right.
But I think if San Jose is not willing to pay him as much as he's expecting, with Tyler Bozak going to free agency, you could see Thornton, you know, maybe being open to the possibility of going to Toronto on a 1-year deal. But that we're far away from that. So
yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, there are some. We'll get to Thornton in a second, because I want to get on the onto the rumor chart. We'll do, and we have some questions. I'm in the chat room and getting some questions from people too.
And Russ will join us in a few minutes.
Really? Wow, Russ coming in.
He just got home.
Coming in off the bench. Russ will be jumping in. Yeah, he was at the game last night. So, the interesting thing here is, you know, I always think about this, of course, because I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel to a lot of the Stanley Cup Finals over the actually all of them over the last 11 years. And so to me, it's like, where am I going to go this year? And so now I'm thinking about who could possibly win the Stanley Cup this year. It's really fascinating. We now know that we're going to have somebody who's never won a Stanley Cup, right? No, except for Tampa. Tampa could possibly. They won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But you know, they won one Stanley Cup. But beyond that, you know, you've got teams now in, you know, Washington, that they've obviously been around for a very long time, you know, I mean, the only team, I guess, you know, the Kings were around a little bit longer, like what, 5 years longer than the Capitals? The Capitals were 72 and
seven.
Right. Yeah. So
Capitals were 74, Kings were 67.
Right. So when the Kings won their cup, teams like the Blues, you know, came around, they've never won it, but you know, there are still teams that haven't won it for, you know, like the Blues, the only one that had been around for 50 years that haven't won it.
Yeah. Cause it was Pittsburgh, LA, Oakland, and they got folded into Minnesota and Dallas, Philadelphia.
They won one in Dallas. Yep.
Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Ross, 67 expansion, LA, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Oakland, and Minnesota. Yeah.
Minnesota, right. So
all of them have won.
They all won a cup except for the Blues.
Right.
And because Oakland won it.
The Blues were in the cup the first 3 years.
Right. Oakland won it as part of Dallas/Minnesota.
Part of Dallas. Yep.
So but yeah, so the Blues, and then, you know, and the Blues actually went to the cup final their first year, right? That they were in.
The first three.
Right, first three. Okay, yeah. So so that you have that. Now you have the Capitals in the next round, next group of, you know, teams enter. So the Caps are, you know, 47 years, right? So,
yeah, but who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting, right? But and been to the final once.
Russ,
wept.
Give us your perspective at the game, because we just talked about it. But the thing was, like I said, I didn't perceive the victory yesterday as a Holtby victory for the Caps. I think it was the way I looked at it, Pittsburgh looked like they ran out of gas. They were lucky to be 1-1 after, because that was not a great goal. I mean, it was a deflection, but it wasn't a great goal that Letang scored. It was off of, I didn't think Pittsburgh had a lot left in the tank, and I think Washington just took advantage of that.
Well, I think Pittsburgh was running low. I do feel like Holtby is the big reason, though. But I also felt like the Caps played a perfect game. But Holtby could have had a shutout that game, and you can't take it away from him. I mean, he did. I don't remember who he made the save on in the third period where he moved to the right post and took it off his chest. But he wasn't even set yet, and he made that save. And usually he's the kind of goalie that gets set first. But he was really throwing caution to the wind. I thought he was fabulous. And actually, post-game, when everybody was sort of in the locker room doing interviews, talking to family, he shook like one person's hand, but he was still like focused on his skates before he packed them away. Like he's got to focus now that he had maybe 2 years ago, but didn't have a lot of this year. And so that's going to help them go a long way. Plus, without Backstrom and Wilson, that's a big deal. Now, I don't think Backstrom's coming back with the way that wrap was. If he does, he's not going to do much. I mean, even if it's a precautionary wrap, his hand is not in good shape. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's so hard.
Injuries are bad. They are.
No, they are, but you have to wait for swelling to clear out on those things, So
but Eck, one slash and he'll be out again. Like it's just,
right.
It's not going to be.
So Ryan Callahan in game 1 or game 2, we'll just target that and see you later. And that's significant because that means Kuznetsov is your number 1, and that's not bad. But who's your number 2? Lars Eller? Not great.
Eller's played great. Like
I know, but it's like he's a number 3.
I know.
Yeah.
The weird thing is they've had some of those guys really step up. I mean, Jakub Vrana played an amazing game. He's played great since they moved him up in lines. Oshie seems to have really come out of it this round and really playing like the Oshie that you would think. So, I think they still could overcome it with great goaltending. And if they're going to get this kind of goaltending, they are going to give a great series. Like it's just funny, after the families, and I do have this up on Sportsology, if people want to check it out, we were able, like 2 of us got something out of Ted Leonsis for about a minute and a half. And so, but he was really happy, but he didn't want to overdo it. He said, go talk to my players. But but you could tell he was really beyond happy, but didn't want to be too happy because he knew he was only going to the conference finals and still wants to get to the cup. And same with Ovechkin. Like Ovechkin, if you didn't feel good for Alex Ovechkin, then you're just heartless. So, Mike, if you didn't feel good for Ovechkin, this is my way of telling you you're heartless.
Tell me something I don't know.
Yeah, because he really, he took some pride in it. He also knew, hey, we've got more rounds to win. But he also had that look like, yeah, okay, we finally did this and we finally beat Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And it really was a massive deal for this team.
Oh, you saw it. I mean, you saw it just in the interviews, I'm sure. I mean, the sense of relief. And like I said to Mike, the fact that he's sort of, it wasn't Crosby's fault, but Ovechkin kind of strips Crosby on that play, the pass is behind him, but Ovechkin takes the puck, gets it to Kuznetsov. It's like the play, it was very symbolic for him. You could tell.
Kunako could have scored in the play before that, and we're not having this conversation.
Right.
Great shot. He had the goalie moving. It barely hit the post. It was mostly in there, and that's the way it goes.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the difference sometimes, and the Penguins, won 2 Stanley Cups on plays like that too. I mean they pretty much dominated most of the series that they played the last couple of years, but they had moments too that they could have easily. Yeah, I mean they got some would say a little bit lucky last year in the game 6 against Nashville to win that game,
and it shifted back against them now.
Yeah, and it's just how it goes, and you can't leave. You put yourself in the position that you can, you don't just as they always say, you just can't leave yourself the opportunity to have something stupid go wrong, like, and that's what happens, right? So that's where they were, I mean, I think that, I really feel now the question that Mike and I both had too, which is something I'd like to get your opinion on, is does Washington now face Tampa as like, because obviously Mike's already said that he thinks Tampa's going to sweep them, winning all games 5-0.
No, I didn't say sweep them. Jeez, come on.
Outscoring them 20-0 in the 4 games.
Yada.
But yeah, no, but I think that do the Capitals get that sense of relief and think they've already won their Stanley Cup, or do
they were very careful about that yesterday. Like, they didn't make that mistake. There was no champagne. There was no corks popping for this. They knew. And even someone like Kuznetsov, who won the game, was pretty calm talking about it post game, other than the joke he made, with McGuire. He was pretty calm about it because they knew, like, they know that work's not done. But now they see the plan sort of coming together. And by the way, you could see that with Trotz too a little bit, because he was under the gun on this. Like,
Trotz just earned his contract extension. That's what happened there, Russ.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
And I go back to another thing that and I'm going to, I'm not sure who I'm picking. I really don't know who I'm picking in Washington, Tampa yet, honestly, as I say all this.
Let's save it.
But I will save it. But I will say the one thing I like for Washington that I do think, and I've talked about this, and I've really been a big proponent of this over the last couple of years, is that, since the early games are so important, the Caps could either, we said, they could either come out like in a hangover from the Pittsburgh series, which I don't think is going to happen, or they come out and they basically deal with the fact that when you play a team over a 6-game series or a 7-game series or even a 5-game series,
right,
you get into a certain mode of playing. And I think that, there is no better team to prepare you for Tampa than Pittsburgh. Like, it's the perfect team for for the Capitals to have played against. Like, where, I feel it's very, you're with Tampa playing Toronto and Boston, you're playing 2 teams that really don't prepare you as much for what you're going to see in Washington. Like, Washington's a totally different kind of bird.
I remember they have that whole Free Willy campaign going now too, which is funny but ridiculous.
Well, I mean, first of all, there's not going to be any kind of advantage when it comes to, like, if Washington had gone to Game 7 and won, they would have played on Wednesday. And, they would have been playing, Game 1 of the next series on Saturday or Sunday, whatever it is. And they would have been more into the action, or, they would have gotten some rest, but they still would have been more closer to the action than Tampa, who's going to have a week off. Now you're going to have Washington, whose last game was Monday, and Tampa, whose last game was Sunday. It's pretty much a wash. So I don't think there's any advantage there, but I think Tampa's got the advantage over say Pittsburgh, because look at Pittsburgh's defense and look at Tampa's. Pittsburgh was playing Oleksiak and Chad Ruedel serious minutes. Those guys wouldn't even be on Tampa. Tampa's defense is so much better than Pittsburgh.
I think they could play on Tampa's bottom pair. I think that's overdoing it. They could.
You think they're better than Coburn or
They're better than Coburn. Coburn right now is a very weak link. Are they better than Girardi? Maybe not.
Yeah.
And you do have a benefit with Tampa because McDonough is, very used to playing against Ovechkin. I mean, that's something that he's been, that does help. That helps a lot because, he's been through the wars with Ovechkin many, many times.
And this is different Ovechkin, I think. Like, this is the best we've seen him in the playoffs. We don't know what's going to happen next round because he's not coming in hot. But
and ask the Bruins, McDonough was a force against the Bruins.
Oh yeah, no, he was a force. And one other thing I wanted to ask you, Russ, before I move on completely is, I wrote about it today a little bit, is, looking back at the Ian Cole, Derek Brassard thing, I can't help but think that it didn't help them. Like, I really think that I don't know what happened with Ian Cole. I don't exactly.
That's the whole thing.
I haven't been able to get to the bottom of why Ian Cole spent so much time in the press box, why he wasn't playing. The only thing I got out of it was that he wasn't going to sign there again.
That's what it was.
But if that's what it is,
But look at the
usually that means that the player's going to play pretty well because they're going to try to get a contract out of somebody else. So why are you not playing him?
But it was managing assets. When they trade for Brassard, they gave up what they gave up. They gave up a really good goaltending prospect in Gustafsson, but they got Brassard for another year at a controllable, at a reasonable amount.
Right, but I think X point is if they really wanted to win this year, Cole gave them a better chance rather than being the best asset manager.
It's not a defenseman. I mean, like at the end of the day, this Penguins team has given up a ton of between Daly and players that have helped them. Cole has been good for them in the playoffs. I mean, he was a good playoff performer for them for 2 runs. So the fact that they didn't have him, and I can't help but think that if they didn't trade him, he would have been in this series.
Someone like Carter Rowney in for Brassard is probably still better if Cole's your defenseman.
Yeah.
Having either one of the other 2 defensemen in for Cole. That's true.
Because the Penguins. Yeah, the Penguins should technically have enough offense, right? I mean, there's without Brassard. Brassard is overkill to a degree because you can't get there's only so much puck to go around.
But I think here's the other thing, Eck, and this is a miscalculation. They got Riley Sheehan. I don't think they knew how good Riley Sheehan could be.
Yeah, no, he's been very good.
They wouldn't have gotten Brassard because Brassard played 4th line last night.
Yeah, and he was a total non-factor in the series. And
he had a couple shots, but he wasn't pretty much a non-factor.
Yeah, and in the playoffs in general, I mean, Brassard really wasn't much to speak of, right?
He's usually been good. This wasn't a great showing for him. So I do think the Ian Cole thing was a big deal. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a strange. It's when you're looking to win a 3rd cup, when you're probably the favorite to win the 3rd cup, it's a strange move in some ways. Like to me,
we're nitpicking because again, a shot off the post.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
The game could still be going on.
But maybe with Ian Cole, you're not in that spot. So that's that situation where you have to worry about the shots off the post. But to me that we talked a lot about Nashville, Winnipeg, kind of already. But
you were right about Nashville. They definitely folded last night. You were right on with that.
I know. Well, just because whenever I get something right, you got to throw something else at me, right? Because you guys are so wrong about the Penguins. So I knew I was completely. I didn't take into account. I mean, and I sort of said it during the show. Like I told Mike, I didn't take into account the pressure that I thought was going to be on Winnipeg. Winnipeg looked like the team that was feeling the pressure of that.
Definitely were feeling it.
And now they're going to go back to Nashville, and now the pressure definitely comes back on the Predators.
No, I don't think so this time.
I think so.
I think they'll feed off the crowd. I don't think. At this point, I think Nashville's got nothing to lose. I really do. At this point, they were facing death. I don't think there's pressure on them.
I still think there's expectation there, Russ. I mean,
there is. I mean,
but now they've won twice in the White Madhouse, the MTS Center. Now it's like, okay, the expectation is they come. What's that?
The weight of Canada is on Winnipeg, especially parts of Ontario.
No.
What do you mean, no? Everybody's going to start putting major pressure. If the Winnipeg Jets don't win this series, after being up in this series, they will be excoriated because there's no one else to flog. Like, this is it.
Especially because Crosby's gone.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's going to be a TV disaster for CBC if it's Nashville, Vegas, and Tampa, Washington.
No, like I've said before, Vegas is not a TV disaster.
I don't know. CBC with Tampa. There's a lot of people snowbirds for that. So
there's a whole lot of Canadians in Florida.
Yeah. So I think that might be okay, Mike.
I'm just talking about TV numbers. I'm talking about TV numbers. I mean,
Stamkos is still a draw, a TV number draw. Like Stamkos is a Canadian. He's a wonder kid up there, So he can't walk the streets of Ontario. There's a reason he didn't. He was nervous to play there.
I'm not worried about it right now.
I think Vegas is such a story that and it's actually the most Canadian team in the NHL. The more Canadians on Vegas than any other team. So that I think they're okay. The U.S. Numbers with Washington. I agree. With Washington, Tampa is going to be tricky for them.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It's now there's a little bit of a story of Will Ovechkin, win his cup. I think
right. And I think there will be some extra looky-loos for that.
That's the story now, right? So that's where he's got to this point. So that's the story. So we'll see what happens on that. But I think that you're going to get a couple interesting things there too.
I don't know if you congratulated the Raptors, but good job, Raptors.
Yeah, that was clutch.
All I know is I heard about their coach possibly getting fired and also possibly winning coach of the year, right? So that's like that's possible with the Raptors. I don't know anything about basketball. I just heard that today. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah,
How about can we talk about for a second that Lewis was fired by Belarus in the middle of the World Championship?
Yeah, Dave Lewis, poor Dave Lewis. Like again, Belarus is a mess, right?
When have you ever heard of a coach being fired in the middle of a tournament?
Finland at the World Junior fired their coach.
Finland did it. Yeah, that's right. That's just so ridiculous, though. It's so, I mean.
But the Finnish coach isn't a guy who has NHL credentials. That's the difference.
Yeah, here. Dave Lewis is a serious coach, right? And he's
a serious coach. And, boy, I don't know what he did or said. Maybe he learned a curse word in their language. I don't know what it was.
Also, I mean, and the fact that they played the Russians pretty hard yesterday. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, they were down 1-0 and after the first period, and they were doing. I mean, the Russians have been destroying everybody, right? So.
If they get relegated here, are they completely out of it? Maybe that's the reason.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I love relegation.
I'm thinking that it could be as dire as that. So maybe that's why they did this out of sheer desperation, because if they get relegated, they're out of hockey for a while.
I want to know how life would be different if the Sabres were ever in danger of being relegated. Like in the NHL, like if we had relegation in the NHL. It's just like, I just. There's come
on, we're already relegated as a city. Do we need our hocky team to be relegated?
I mean, it's the greatest hockey city. It's amazing. I mean, they kill. They're great fans. They're huge, but I know how frustrated they are. And I just think that maybe if the pressure of relegation was on there, maybe the management would have done something different over these years and pressured a little bit harder. That's all I question. We have a question though from the chat room, and it goes into our next topic anyway. So I want to do it right now. Cameron Young asks us, "What the hell is going on in Carolina? Don Waddell, really? That too means no other GMs wanted the job."
Shocking.
I mean, look, we're not shocked by the news. I thought there was a chance that I could be wrong and they would just use Waddell for the business side, but clearly that didn't happen. So I guess they ran out of candidates, which you would think with all the teams that are left in it, there's definitely viable guys. But again, the problem is I felt like they narrowed the field too much, forgetting about the money. Apparently they raised the money to a point where the money was doable for other GM types. The issue is it's those other factors that are involved that I guess wasn't as doable.
Well, I did talk to one person who was involved with this. I talked to him in depth about it, and he said, I just never got the sense, and I had many conversations with him, with the owner. I never got the sense that I would have any control.
Right.
And he said, and I wanted to, and I really wanted to give it a shot. This guy really wanted to. He felt like he could possibly do it. He said, I just never got the sense. So, I mean, there are some people that turned it down for sure, and more people turned it down. Remember earlier on they said that a lot of people were turning it down. That wasn't the case. More people have turned it down in the last 2 weeks, I think. Then they really went underground with it, and a lot of people got offered it. But all that said, now Waddell's, I like Waddell a lot. He's a great guy. And I think that he could be a fine GM too. But now they've also brought in Rod Brind'Amour as their coach today, right? So let's talk about the whole combination.
So he is a guy with no head coaching experience.
Yes.
Yep.
But with no NHL owners experience, and now you've got a coach with no head coaching experience.
Right.
And you haven't hired anyone really, because both these people were on your payroll already.
Well, they hired Rick Dudley, so he is the one.
And Dudley, I believe, will be probably more of the player GM.
You would assume that Brind'Amour is getting a boost in pay from an assistant to a head coach.
Oh, I wouldn't assume that in this situation.
Well, if that's the case, then
here's the problem.
This is a clown car.
Here's the problem with this. The problem with this is, while he is beloved there, I do believe a lot of those fans were looking for somebody with experience, not Rod Brind'Amour, because this is, again, the move of an owner that doesn't really understand the league and wants to bring in the former hero that talks a good game and maybe can be a good coach, but we really don't know.
Rod Brind'Amour is a very intelligent guy, and yes. And he speaks very well. I mean, he's very well spoken. He's going to do good. He's going to be very good for press conferences. It's funny because he was not a well-spoken guy as a player, but he's grown into it,
But we don't care about that, Eck. At the end of the day, if you're a diehard Carolina Hurricanes fan, you were looking for something this offseason, and other than Rick Dudley, I don't think you got it.
Yeah, you know what this is reminiscent of? This is reminiscent of Wayne Gretzky being head coach of the Arizona Coyotes. Right. And that's dangerous because, Wayne Gretzky is, an immortal, but from all the indications, he didn't do a great job as coach. So
Rod Brind'Amour is the Wayne Gretzky of the Carolina Hurricanes. He really is. I mean,
yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying he can't be. I'm just saying, you didn't go out and get somebody who paid his dues in the American Hockey League. You didn't get somebody who had a NHL experience, who had been at a couple. You got a brand new coach, somebody who's got to prove himself, and somebody you don't know, and who's an unknown commodity. And you've got enough unknown commodities with the Carolina Hurricanes. Why do you need one more?
I'll show you how much the game has changed. 5 years ago, like Ranger fans before Vigneault were screaming for Messier. Not all of them, but quite a contingent. You don't hear Messier's name at all now for the New York job at all. And you don't hear anybody right now for the New York job, which is kind of weird.
That is very strange. We haven't, like, the New York job is so. Yeah, now Dave Lewis is available.
But I'm just saying, but I think Carolina's fans were shooting higher than Brind'Amour. No offense to him.
I think so. A lot of them were very happy about this, though. And this is a little bit of, like, there are definitely some people down there that are hockey people that are just like, no. But a lot of people were very happy about it on the internet today. Okay. I mean, and I guess you just got to see how it goes, right? But
okay, let me ask the obvious question here, though.
Yes.
Because the owner is a businessman, is he just giving the people what they want so they show up and not really knowing if this is going to be the right thing for the organization? It does seem that way.
It does seem that way, and it's hard to turn away from that. I mean, and it really does feel that way. It feels as if that is what's happening. I think there's also a sense of the fact that how to put this, like, that he wants I think wants to see how things go over the course of a season without Francis being involved somehow. Like, he wants to see what can happen. Like, he wants to play with it a little bit. Like, and he doesn't want to bring anybody in who's too powerful. So he wants to make sure that he's got some.
Yeah.
See, some guys who are super successful like that, CEOs like me, that are super successful. Just kidding.
We got the joke in that. Don't worry.
Yeah, there was no laughter. That's really makes me uncomfortable. I was hoping for something.
He's created.
You don't laugh, and I just feel like you're like, yeah, that guy is really a jerk. All right, so, but who are like me, like they really want to make sure that they can control things before they give up control.
Right. What he's done, Eck, is he's created a vacuum that only he can fit.
Right.
And that's where, okay, I understand being somebody who wants hands-on control will do that. But it's awful dangerous in a realm where you have no experience, and maybe he thinks he can step in and have an impact and have a positive impact on that franchise. And with advisors like Waddell and Dudley, who Dudley knows what he's doing in terms of drafting, so there's a good talent evaluator. But you have a veteran guy who's been a GM for a number of years in Waddell, but I think clearly he took that job because he wanted to get back in as a GM, and this might be his last chance to do so. Right. And you've got a neophyte as a head coach. It's not exactly a winning formula from in my eyes and a lot of people's eyes.
Thing about this that's really strange. Okay, Waddell was doing a lot of the negotiations with the possible GMs in this situation. So if I'm a CEO and I'm like. And I go to Mike, I want you to hire me a Maple Leafs writer, and you're going out, you're interviewing Maple Leaf writers, and you're telling them, well, you're not going to get control. This guy wants this guy wants that, and no one gets, and everyone turns away, and then you get the job. That has a weird look to it, I think Waddell is like above board. I think he's completely above board. I just think that there's a whole perspective here there is this what is perception is reality sometimes thing about the NHL.
Who was in charge of the vice presidential search in 2000 for George W. Bush? Dick Cheney. And who was the VP? Dick Cheney. So there you go.
No, I think it's more like when Dwight got hired as the VP of Dunder Mifflin. The assistant, rather. I think it was more like that. It seemed
very nice. All right, a couple more questions real quick out of here before we get out of here today. So Hunter's asking, what is the Ducks off-season plan? Do you think Corey Perry has value in a trade? If so, what is that value?
I think Perry you actually have to hold on to because at least there's a greasy factor. I think Kessler is the guy you would look to trade if you could actually trade him.
No, I don't think you can trade either of them.
Trade any of them.
Yeah, I don't think you can trade either of them because the cap hit is so onerous. I mean, right now, Corey Perry has got 3 more years at 8.6. He's making more than Getzlaf. Kessler's is 4 more years at 6.875, and he's come off like 2 years in a row where he's been injured. I don't think
somebody take Perry though if you retain salary.
No.
I think they keep him for 1 more year, and if the decline continues, he's a buyout.
Well, this is what I've heard. I've heard that they have tried the retain salary thing. And I don't know where that's going. I've heard that they have serious interest in Joe Thornton in Anaheim. And that's an interesting way to go for them. I mean, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, it's Anaheim's in such a weird spot because remember, this is a team that believed a very little while ago that they were right on the cusp, right? And now this year,
they still could be. That's the funny.
And they still could be, right? But then they had all these defensive prospects. They got rid of a bunch of them.
But they still have some. But their problem is that the veteran core has a window now.
Right.
Very much so, right?
Perry, Getzlaf, Kessler, I think at most have 2 years, and you're paying them collectively over $22 million a year. That maybe they have to trade one of them, but I don't know how they do it.
You can't really trade Kessler or Perry. I mean, and now you could.
And why would you want to trade Getzlaf?
Right. You don't want to trade Getzlaf. So at the end of the day, yeah, I think that's really a tricky thing. A tricky thing for them to navigate. I do think they'll be aggressive. I think they'll go
have to re-up Ryan Miller, don't they? I mean, wasn't he a 1 year deal?
No, he was a 2. He was a 2 year.
Yeah, that's right. He was 2 years. Yeah.
Okay, so they're okay there. So
Cam Fowler and Josh Manson's new deal kick in this year,
which are good deals for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have a core there that's not, horrendous. They're not a team that's going to fall. The bomb's going to fall out of.
Richie's still getting better, but they need a little more offense. They do.
Yeah, they do. I could see Thornton, being a possibility. Maybe they make a run at Rick Nash. There's something. I mean, they're going to make a run.
I thought you wanted somebody who was going to help.
They're going to make a run at somebody like that, is what I've been told. So, I mean, and I don't see them.
Heck, seriously, when we talk about Rick Nash now,
yeah, what
are we really talking about as far as someone that can help? I mean, Rick Nash probably is looking for $4 million, maybe $5 million. And teams are going to want to give him 2.5.
Yeah, honestly, Rick Nash should accept an Eric Stahl type deal. 3 years, $3 million per. Yeah. That I think teams would bite at that. If he's asking for 4 or 5, he may get it, but he may not. He may get it from a team that's not even close to being a contender.
If you go on the rumor chart, guys, and check out the rumor chart, you can see it. I have Rick Nash today. And the team that I've heard that's interesting with him is Ottawa. Okay, so
I think it's even too expensive for Ottawa.
Yes.
It depends on, I think I've heard a couple times about Nash. I've heard he does want a pretty good term on the contract. Not the money might not be there, but he also wants to know that he's going to be a top 6 player on the team.
Where I think he'll go? I think when the Sharks are done with Joe Thornton, I think he'll go to the Sharks.
Possible, I mean, or if the Sharks keep Joe Thornton, I mean, those two are tight, So
yes,
that's
if Thornton really comes back cheap, but he'd have to come back cheaper.
Yeah,
under $5 million.
Yeah. Finally, before we stop today, the last question we have on here that I wanted to go to was, we started talking about this a little bit yesterday, but Vepsis says who would right now be from all the remaining playoff teams your leading candidate for the Conn Smythe? You can pick either Nashville or Winnipeg as well, since they still have a Game 7.
Right now. Yeah. Without it getting to the finals, it's Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yeah, it's Fleury for me right now.
Yeah, and I think it's Fleury, and I think that if like I said yesterday, I think that if they get to the finals, it's Fleury win or lose. Like I think that if you have to go with him, there's nobody else.
If he doesn't have a good final, they probably wouldn't do it. But I mean,
what define good? I mean, the fact that he's taken them to where they are. I mean, if he gets,
I guess somebody could overshadow him if they go 4 goals in the finals or something.
I mean, Kuznetsov is making a pretty good case for himself.
If Braden Point scored 10 points in 5 games,
he's made a good case for himself too.
Yes, Braden Point is a guy who's in that discussion for sure. And now if Kuznetsov were to catch fire, he might get in that discussion.
Yeah, I mean that goal last night combined with some other goals he scored a big overtime goal against Columbus, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So that's it. And then Mike's doing the little the bird thing that he does every time, which is okay. I mean, what do we think of that? I mean, it's all right, but
it's obnoxious.
Birdman, but I think it's like the eagle because he's in Washington. But who knows?
I'm not a big fan of it after scoring an overtime goal to eliminate a team in playoffs. Like I think that to me is when you should just be more happy with your team's accomplishments.
Well, I mean, this is
more of a selfish thing.
If people in Pittsburgh are unhappy with that, this is the franchise that had a guy who saluted every time he scored an overtime goal.
Right. So and Tiger Williams, rode his stick no matter what. Like there's just some guys that are going to do that.
Oh, yeah, and I usually don't mind that, but I think that there's a point at which like over winning a series, when you win a series on a goal, that's like a team moment to me, and that you don't want to take them away from the team by doing something like that. That's my opinion, but who knows? That's all the time we have for today.
Getting old and stuffy.
Oh, I'm definitely getting old and stuffy. There's no two ways about that. That's not a question. That's an E5 there, man.
I was young and stuffy.
Yeah, so I will be updating the rumor chart again today, like I did yesterday. I'm trying to do 2 blogs a day these days. So check out. There's one usually around 11 or 10 or 11, 1 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon. So because there's a lot going on here, and it's going to just get accelerated, especially with players that are being eliminated. Because now you have to look at the Penguins. The Penguins don't really have any UFAs that are really an issue, but they have a lot of RFAs.
Do you do the second blog before or after you watch Jeopardy? I just want to know.
I never have seen a Jeopardy show in my entire life. I'll throw that.
Come on, you're getting at that age. You got to start putting
I'm not a Jeopardy guy. No.
I watched Jeopardy when I was a kid because I had to answer all the questions.
No, I know. There's a joke.
I am not a Jeopardy person.
No, it's Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, Wheel of Fortune.
Yes, there you go.
Totally given up in life, and you don't want to have to think too much.
We have to end, guys.
Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Talk to you tomorrow.